Good afternoon, everyone. Bula Vinaka, and hello from the Pacific. Apologies for the delay. We have some last-minute changes with our speakers due to some urgent commitments that have come up. But nevertheless, we'll do this, and we're really great that you all could make it to this event here today. My name is Deepitika Chand. You can call me Dipti, and I'm the National Agriculture Expert for Fiji. Doing consultancy work for the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. And it's my pleasure to moderate today's event on strengthening GHG data management and mitigation in Pacific, and learning from the lessons and future pathways on the Enhanced Transaprency Framework, our Paris Agreement, and the Global Methane Pledge, which many Pacific Islanders are part of. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Mate Gasperic, who is the Director for Mitigation Program at GHMI, to deliver opening remarks. So.
Thank you. Good morning. I was just voluntold minutes ago to have the welcome speech for you. So I would just like to have that I would welcome you, all of you here on today's event. I think, the data management and having a data is crucial for each and every country, and especially it's crucial for the Oceania region, because, you are one of the most exposed and vulnerable, right? So I think through today's session, you will have some opportunities to see the lessons learned in the region, because the good practices that show good results in one part of the Oceania could be very easily replicated to the other islands, right? So yes, thank you again for all of you to come here and listen, the lessons learned. The GHGMI was established back in 2007, and our main purpose is capacity building, transfer of knowledge. Maybe you are familiar with our courses that are, available online, and but we are especially happy when we have an opportunity to engage with the countries in person through different pipelines. I think you will learn also here today from about the ICAT, Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, which in principle allows us to provide our technical support to the countries in person and really make a big difference for their MRV systems. That would be pretty much it from my side. So thank you very much again for coming. It's a little bit small, cozy place, but I think it's more like, we feel like tutta una familia, right? So it's more like a family size. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mate. So colleagues, today's event really provides us with an invaluable opportunity to discuss how we can strengthen GHG data management and methane mitigation action across the Pacific. We have two panelists. So the session is going to be divided into two parts. The first part, we are going to listen to country experiences, and then the second part will focus on the support side that's available in the Pacific. And the two country representatives that we have today is Ms. Ranjila Singh, who is the mitigation specialist from Fiji's Climate Change Division, and then we have Mr. Nelson Carlo, who is the Director for Climate Change from Vanuatu. And I'd like to invite you both to the front so that we can okay. And I'd also like to invite Zaharia Bani to join Mr. Carlo. So buckle up, everyone, because we're going to be listening to a lot of great work that is being done in the Pacific. And I think we had three speakers, but now that we're down to two countries, we have a lot of time. So I'll give you the mic to discuss and share with us the experiences from the Pacific. Over to you, Ranjila.
Thank you, Dipti, and Vula Vinaka, everyone, and warm greetings from the Pacific. Not so warm here, but I know we are missing our weather at home, especially our Pacific Island countries. But today I would like to share the experiences and the lessons that we have learned through the implementation of our Enhanced Transparency Framework work that Fiji is doing under the Paris Agreement. So we all know that the countries have to submit updated or a new NDC, which we fancy term is the NDC 3.0. And we understand that it needs to be more ambitious and also it needs to be progressive. That means it needs to include more sectors and also more greenhouse gases, or all sectors, all greenhouse gases, and also covering different categories of greenhouse gas emissions. And of course we also have to consider the national circumstances for this, because we need to look at what are the impacts that these targets or sectors or categories will have, and those that will have greater impacts are the ones that we are looking forward to incorporating in our updated NDCs. So for these, Fiji has taken quite bold steps to strengthen its not only data flow system, but also to go beyond the non-CO2 gases. We want to strengthen the data flow systems and also the institutional arrangements. So the two of the short-lived climate pollutants that Fiji is currently focusing on is methane and also the hydrofluorocarbons. And I would like to just elaborate a bit more on our national inventory report that we had published last year. So in our national inventory report, you can see that in Fiji, energy is the largest emitting sector. And our forestry is a sink, and followed by that is the second largest emission in Fiji is from agriculture. So we understand that, and we also want to emphasize on mitigation actions in this sector. And in order to have very effective mitigation actions in this sector, we need to understand, we need to strengthen our data flows and data systems. So that is what Fiji is focusing on. And Fiji is also a member of the Global Methane Pledge, because we are committed to reducing the methane emissions from our agricultural sector. And it has been identified in our national inventory report that it is a key category. That means it does have a significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions in Fiji. So we are committed to that fight, given that, as you all must be aware, that methane is highly potent greenhouse gas. It is 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Its global warming potential is much higher. So that is why we are emphasizing in this, given that we have 13.14% of greenhouse gas emissions from our agricultural sector, and both manure management and entering fermentation are key categories for Fiji. So that's why we are emphasizing on this. And with our stakeholder consultations, we have seen there's interest from our agricultural stakeholders to have mitigation related targets in our updated NDCs. Currently our NDC 2 or updated NDC, it has climate smart agriculture as adaptation target. So now we have good information from our national inventory report, and based on that we want to have a qualitative target for our greenhouse gas emission reductions, specifically for methane. So that is what we are planning to do. And just to strengthen these efforts, we are doing numerous projects in Fiji. And one of them is our ICAT Phase 2 project, where we are enhancing our MRV system for the agricultural livestock. So what we're trying to do here is we want to move from tier 1 to tier 2 calculations, and through this ICAT project we have mapped out the data that we have, the data flows, the gaps, and we also have worked with our stakeholders on how we are going to fulfill these data gaps. And based on this project, we have identified that Fiji can now move from tier 1 to tier 2 calculations for the agricultural sector, for manure management and enteric fermentation. So that is what we have achieved through the ICAT project. And also in our National Inventory Report 2023, for the first time we had reported the air conditioning and refrigeration as one of our IPPU categories. And it was also identified as a key category. And through the ICAT project, what we tried to do is we have also mapped the data flow system for the hydrofluorocarbons in Fiji, so for air conditioning and refrigeration systems in Fiji, and that has been also achieved by our ICAT project. And not only that, we also did the data mapping for our waste management sector so that we can identify the mitigation potential for waste sector, specifically the solid waste management. We are incorporating the targets for biogas digesters in our NDCs, so that is something that will be consulted, and we see that there is a potential for this through ICAT project in Fiji. So those are some of the work that we have been doing, and not only that, we have also moved, as I had explained earlier, we want to move to tier 2 calculation for enteric fermentation and manure management and also livestock sector. So in this, we are doing a project through New Zealand Agricultural Research Centre, funded by the Ministry of Primary Industries, and here we are also looking at tier 2 emissions for cattle, goats and sheep. So this shows the effort that Fiji, being a negligible emitter in the globe, is trying to move forward to tier 2 calculations so that we have more robust data and so that our mitigation actions actually have an impact on ground. So that's why we are strengthening our data flow systems, our institutional arrangements, and so on. And we also have another project that is specifically focusing on the livestock as well under the ACAR project. And this one here, we're trying to have country-specific emission factors. That is also an important gap when it comes to moving forward to tier 2. So we are taking a programmatic approach. We can't achieve everything in one project. So what we have done is, through support, we have identified with our expert embedded in our division, agricultural expert, that what are some of the gaps, what are the immediate needs, and how we can address those gaps through numerous projects. So you must have heard that there's so many support that I'm referring to. So these are trying to align with each other, not to duplicate the efforts. So we have our clean air and climate coalition expert, Ms. Diptika, embedded with us, who is leading this good work. As you know that we Pacific Island countries are mostly challenged with technical and also human resources. So we appreciate this support, and also we are implementing the capacity building initiative for transparency project, which is known as CBIT project, where we want to digitalize our inventory and MRV system. So with all these efforts, once we have our digitalized system, this will allow us to report more efficiently to UNFCCC. Not only that, most of all, we'll have this data readily available, accessible, robust data, so that when we are looking at mitigation actions, improvements in our inventories, this is where the resource that we'll be using. So we have partnered with the GHGMI to develop our CBIT digital transparency tool for Fiji. So this is one of the important things that we have done, and the lessons that we have learned is, as I had mentioned earlier, we are taking a programmatic approach to improve our capacity. Through these projects, we are also improving or training our line ministries, our government staff, not only that, our stakeholders, on the importance of capturing this data. We have seen that most of them, they collect the data, but it's for their data needs. and they don't have to duplicate the efforts. What they need to do is just include few more information, and that will help us with our climate actions fight in Fiji. So that's what we're trying to do in Fiji. And for our local capacity building, as I said earlier, all these projects, they have a component for training for our government line ministry staff and stakeholders. So this is what we are currently doing in Fiji, and we know there's a lot more potential that we can enhance our capacities, so we are looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, and it's really exciting to know the way Fiji has envisioned on which areas to focus on, and the way the most efficient use of resources and resource allocation could be achieved. With these words now, I'd like to invite our colleagues from Vanuatu to share some of their experiences from our neighboring country.
Yes, thank you very much, MC and colleagues here in the room. A very good afternoon. Thank you, Fiji, for putting a context. As most of the time, the context for Pacific Island countries were more or less faced with similar circumstances and the challenges. Though our emission is very small, but we want to demonstrate our commitment and why we see climate change as a priority for us. And for the case of Vanuatu, our global contribution in terms of GHG emission is 0.0016, which is totally unacceptable in terms of how we may, in terms of contribution for climate change. But we want to demonstrate, and being a leader at that space, to say that though our contribution is very small, but we want to enhance our transparency effort to be able to commit, noting our obligation to the Paris Agreement. So therefore, these kinds of opportunities comes in to be able to strengthen where we are, and now we want to see things in the future. Like Fiji, we, of course, be able to acknowledge the fact that we have constraints in terms of capacity and capabilities to be able to counter the needs in terms of transparency, the overall space or scope of transparency. So with that of Vanuatu, most of the time, as I would like to say here, most of the time when we're talking about preparing all these sorts of programs to be able to oblige with the Article 13 of Paris Agreement, basically in terms of reporting, we have to source that capacity outside of Vanuatu. That's why some of the supports that we took from UNOPS and through the GHGMI and the ICAT, it's a kind of an opportunity for us to be able to strengthen our internal capacity. Because most of the time, we will not longer depend on what coming from outside. We have to build a base of resources within our countries. So what we did, just before going into it, for us in Vanuatu under our NDC, our commitment is to reach close to 100% renewable energy by 2030. We know it's an ambitious target, but at some stage we have to demonstrate leadership as to how we are committed to reduce emission domestically. We know there are challenges ahead of us in terms of technology, financing, capacity building, but at some stage there are parts and parcels which to be mapped together to be able to put something tangible, which of course will create an impact for the communities. And within our overall space of greenhouse gas emission, livestock is a major contributor. That when I'm talking livestock, I'm referring to methane and nitrous oxide, which is a major contributor in terms of domestic greenhouse gas emission. But aside of that, with the assessment conducted, that's a circular economy assessment, which therefore triggers the need to focus on electrification as a subsector within the energy sector, to be able to see how we may reduce emission, and of course, with the impacts that will generate over time. That's where the concerns for energy security is concerned. And then with some challenges in terms of how we are to commit within the ETF framework and ETF space itself. We have challenges in terms of technical expertise. So that's why we put together a package of support, and then we communicate to the UNOPS and the ICAT. So what the package of support is more or less on the GHG inventory, policy impact assessment, and how the institutions may be able to strengthen within the domestic level itself to be able to counter those challenges, basically in terms of reporting the GHG emission. Because the reason why we approach at this angle is because if we want to know and contribute to the global community to know the exact as to where we are and how our contribution globally may be able to create an impact for the target towards reaching 1.5. So this is the path we took through this project, the ICAT project, where we built the capacity of locals. And I want to share the experience that before we're digging into those locals to capacity build through this project, they had zero knowledge as to how the emission is calculated. But most of the time when the locals hear about GHG emission calculation, that's something that strikes them out of them engaging in this process. So we're kind of pulling all these locals, basically those that just graduated and with a similar relevance of qualification. So we engage them through this process to capacity build. And after the project and through this training, I would say that they're kind of being in a state where they can advise me in terms of where the emission is, calculating the emissions, what the attributes that may be able to give us the correct as to where we are and how we are do things. And in additional of that, there is another package of support through that ICAT is policy impact assessment. So how the policy impact assessment had an impact on our policies, we select two policies, one from agriculture and another one from livestock, noting their domestic emission contribution. So how that activity is conducted is we evaluate as to where the emissions and how the policy is framed, and whether or not there is a consideration of climate mitigation within those policies. So and then at the end of the day, these are some policy recommendations which will be mapped and then communicate to the sectors. This is some of the considerations subject to whatever in the future, when you are to review your policy, given now that the climate change is a cross-cutting issue, you have to get into consideration 1, 2, 3 recommendations from your sector. And then those key experts within that capacity building, they tend to know whatever kind of activity data they are to collected, whichever sector. And again, within that capacity building, they're kind of documenting what we call the modules, the data collection modules, because we are anticipating that I will be leaving this position in the next 10 or 5 or so years. So how do we enable the sustainability of this knowledge? So we're kind of creating these modules across all these emission sectors, IAFOLU, energy, waste, and the IBBU. We're kind of creating where to collect, how to do the calculation, what you will expect at the end of the day. So that's where sustainability of things comes in. We cannot continue to request for capacity building in the future. So we have to build those into our systems, because we always and almost encounter issues to do with staff turnover. Because there are opportunities there when we talk about climate change, other than working in a space within the ministry or the department. So we're kind of putting this together just to ensure sustainability of this activity. If cases I left or those who trained left, another one comes in without very minimal knowledge, but he or she may be able to get a flow through what needs to be done. So that's how we mapped into where we see sustainability of things into the future. So I think these are some of the lessons which I would like to draw from the ICAT project and what we are doing in Vanuatu. And in additional of that, like the colleague from Fiji mentioned, in terms of the carbon coalition, we are also in that space and we also a country that endorsed this carbon coalition, to be able to see how this um, this GHG emission gases, or this group of gases, may be able to have it reflected in our NDC and potentially bring about some actions or interventions to be able to address. As we know, these are in terms of global warming potentials, those other high gases which are having high impact other than what in terms of the carbon and the others that we already have. So this is something which we will be, of course, looking into when we refine or submit a new NDC and seeing into areas where those gases can be mapped. And maybe in going into the future, we're just not only wanting to something like, most of the time we often heard about being ambitious, being ambitious. If I commit myself to be so to the world that being ambitious, then what will you offer for me to be able to implement? So just before I end, I would like to say that we are kind of wanting to move beyond where we are. Though there are some restrictions in terms of resources to be able to address those needs. And financing, capacity building, and technology is three most important means of implementation that Vanuatu and, of course, my other colleague member countries from the Pacific needs to be able to deliver on expectation. And capacity building is one out of them, which we know many concepts, many new ideas, many things are introduced through this process of negotiation. So at some stage, there needs to be some forms of capacity building to be able to transfer those knowledge, and then locally we may be able to counter subject to the requirements of ETF. So I think that's all from me, subject to the lessons and where we see fit, which we at this space present to you, and then wherever you may get into and introduce to your domestic systems to be able to support you. So maybe I'll stop from here and I'll hand over the mic to my colleagues. Sakaraya Bani is our coordinator for the ICAT. Maybe if he wanted to expand more on basically the implementation side of the ICAT project. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Acting Director, for sharing a few thoughts. I think I will start off by saying a very big thank you to UNOPS, ICAT, and my implementing partner, which is Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. I would like to say that before the project came in terms of capacity building, we have little to none regarding greenhouse gas emissions. Having gone through ICAT phase 1, which is currently ongoing and it will be ending at the end of this year, I think me and my fellow colleagues that we've gone through this project, we have learned a lot, and we appreciate the help that our implementing partners came in to provide. From the project, I think a lot has been said by the director. Implementing the project, we've done the greenhouse gas manual that he mentioned. The manual is there to help the locals if we decide to leave or vacate the office and another person comes in to take over the job, but there's greenhouse gas inventory manual that is there that the other colleague or person that comes in can use to start from scratch and do the calculations for the greenhouse gas inventory for Vanuatu. Also is the policy assessment that he mentioned, that we focused on 2 policies, that is the agriculture, one from the agriculture sector and also the livestock sector. That is also a big part of the project, that the sectors in Vanuatu can see what the results have been done on the policies and what is there for them to consider of the emissions that they are currently giving out in the agriculture sector. Also, I think there's another one, which is the national inventory, the institutional arrangements. I think we also strengthen those between our stakeholders so that we could have a clear and logic idea of what to do in order to report accurate to under the Paris Agreement for our NDCs. So I think that is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues from Vanuatu. And yeah, we can really resonate from Fiji the capacity constraints. And I really like the way that you've addressed the sustainability of various processes in your ministries, because this is very important. The huge staff turnover in the Pacific does create the need for more external parties to come and do the work there for us. But with documentation, proper documentation, I think this is something that's a good way forward for everyone in the Pacific, and perhaps also other SIDS as well. With these words, I'd like to thank you guys, and please have a seat, and we'll call you back for the Q&A session, or perhaps since we have some space constraints, we could do Q&As from our seats. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the first group of panelists for this event. Next, we will delve into a panel discussion exploring support streams for methane mitigation and data, greenhouse gas data management, focusing on capacity building initiatives, technical resources available to the national systems or the different parties. Each of our expert panelists will share insights on advancing data accuracy and strengthening institutional capacity to meet the Enhanced Transaprency Framework of the Paris Agreement and the Global Methane Pledge targets. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Martina Otto, the head of CCAC Climate and Clean Air Secretariat, Dr. Olia Glade, Director for MRV Systems at GHGMI, and Mr. Oleg it's difficult for me to pronounce your name, but who is representing the ICAT Secretariat. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our esteemed panelist. So I'll hand over the mic to Ms. Otto.
Thanks very much, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you. Maybe to kick us off, why methane? It is because we talk about the other half of warming. That's not only methane, but it's also the other short-lived climate pollutants. And we heard a little bit of an allusion to that as well with the HFCs, with black carbon, tropospheric ozone, just as well. And we talk about the other half of warming to just make sure how important the tackling those pollutants is. Also because they are the pretty much best bet that we have right now to bring us back on a 1.5 degree pathway. And that is due to the fact that they have a higher global warming potential than CO2 and a shorter lifetime in the atmosphere. And that means by addressing them, we can curve the warming curve faster. So that's why it's critical. But for the countries, the SIDS countries overall, I think it's extremely important to note as well that short-lived climate pollutant reduction can reduce the rate of sea level rise by 24% and reduce cumulative sea level rise by 22% by the end of the century. So this is not trivial, and in addition to that, there are also local benefits in terms of health directly, because often enough this goes hand in hand with air pollution. We have potential benefits as well on the agricultural sector, on if we harness productivity gains If we look at the waste sector, which obviously is a problem everywhere, that we address that. So there's a lot of additional benefits that we can generate here. We look at efficient cooling systems as well. So there's a wealth of things that we can harness. We talk about buying time, but with regard to the impact. So that almost makes it an adaptation measure, reducing the risk, the needs for adaptation. Now, we are really pleased to welcome Vanuatu and the Republic of Fiji to our coalition earlier this year. This was a big step, joining many of the neighbors like Federate States of Micronesia, Palau, Australia, New Zealand, and New Caledonia. And 15 Pacific states are members of the Global Methane Pledge already, and the CCIC provides secretariat services to the GMP. And with that, we are offering a whole support system to countries, from technical assistance to institutional strengthening. We keep talking about people, plans, and policies. So really the institutional strengthening, developing plans and policies, but also innovative projects where we look at different technologies. Now, I wanted to highlight very much the NDCs because obviously this is what moves us all at the moment, as they are due in the new revised form 3.0 next year. And I really encourage us to think of them as the investment plans for the future. So it's both showing a commitment, but also showing where the investments need to go. And if we want them to be good enough, then obviously the data is important to build them, but then also in terms of the reporting so that we have the assurance further down the line. In the CCIC, we've been providing support, for example, on integrated inventories. And I really want to highlight that as a key area, again, because all the different pollutants do matter. And I heard beforehand, for example, forestry. But forestry, if we have tropospheric ozone, the effectiveness of the forestry sector to be a carbon sink is actually impeded. And so that means as well, looking at the data, looking at the quantification of benefits is a critical piece here as well. And the last bit that I wanted to highlight is because there has been a lot of emphasis on the data, and this is critically important, but we just as much look at the institutions, the institutional strengthening, the capacity support to actually devise also some of the regulations that are needed, because otherwise we'll not be able to act on the data that we will get. And maybe with that, I stop here, but there's a whole support system that is in place. We've supported on the SLCPs in the last 2 years over 65 countries. So there's a resource there that is available, and that goes obviously beyond only the CCIC Trust Fund, but also this ecosystem of funders that is around now to help make good on the Global Methane Pledge as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Otto. I'd like to now give the mic to Ms. Olia Glade. We'll do a wrap-up at the end of the three speakers.
Thank you, dear colleagues, and thank you for coming here. I'm working at GHGMI, which is Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, and our institute has a special relationship with Oceania and Pacific Island. I live in New Zealand, so I feel myself as a part of this region. They're my dear neighbors and friends. We believe that Oceania has a great potential in terms of mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions. And for that, one of the key things is having reliable data, robust and reliable data. However, as Martina said, data is not everything. To produce the data, to get them, to achieve the targets in NDC and to fulfill the obligations under the Methane Pledge, the country needs different elements of support which GHGMI is providing to Oceania and Fiji and Vanuatu and other countries in that area. So one of them is creating a strong legal regulatory framework where the efforts in mitigation will be well supported by government officials, and the stakeholders who are supposed to provide the data will have very clear line of sight why this data needs to be provided, what needs to be provided, how it needs to be done. So that's one big element which we believe needs to be established and enhanced in this region and other regions as well. The second element is building capacity for human resources, because without humans, without people who can actually do the calculations, do the analysis, go and collect the data, it is not possible to produce any reliable inventories, any reliable projects, etc., and track the progress towards the NDC target. That is why the second element which you're focusing on is the education and training and capacity building in this region and other regions as well. And for that, we need to identify the key needs and gaps. That's the first thing to do. And identify also the pathways for the data through the system, because in different parts on these pathways, different elements of training need to be incorporated and built up. So that's the second element. The third element is technical support to the whole process and the system, which includes the information systems, which we also provide, as Ranjila already mentioned. We have designed the first prototype for the activity data platform and implemented it, and we are going to have the event tomorrow and presenting it. And both Fiji and Vanuatu are active participants in introduction and implementing it. Also, Fiji is pioneering the first integrated approach to integrated MIV information system support, which includes several pillars, including activity data collection, policy, and tracking the NDC progress. We are having big plans to extend it and offer this model to other countries and regions, because we believe without these elements of support, and I repeat again, regulatory, the arrangements, the human capacity and information systems, reaching our ideas and reaching our targets in NDC and the Methane Pledge is just not possible. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Olia. And last but not the least, I'd like to invite Oleg.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for having me today here. First, I'd like shortly introduce the ICAT. It's an initiative for climate action transparency, and I would call it the partnership, the ecosystem, where basically the countries, they are playing the central role, because our country partners are not just the recipients of support, they are active players, and they also exchange the knowledge among each other, and that's the important part of the capacity building, not only through the technical experts from developed countries. And then we have donors who kindly provide the funds to implement the country projects. And we have our technical experts, Olia and Matei are here in the room today. And we have other partners who help the countries to elaborate and to implement the MRV frameworks and all the issues, to address all the issues relevant to data collection and management. And we operate basically in 3 streams of work. One is the direct country projects and support through the regional hubs. The second one is our suite of tools and guides that are available to any countries, regardless of whether they are part of ICAT or not. You can go to the website and download them and use them. And the third one is the knowledge sharing, which I mentioned before, as an exchange between the countries, and participate in our different community meetings that we organize for our countries to basically to share the lessons learned through the projects and generate new ideas. But what I'd like to emphasize in the context of what's been said before by Fiji, by Ranjila and Nelson, and that's really essential, that when we started the projects, the idea was that we would help the countries to fulfill the requirements of Article 13, basically to to generate the data for the BTRs. And now the discussion is shifting towards how to use this data for NDC update, how to use the data for assessment of policies and measures, and to attract maybe climate finance to the countries. And that's really important, because that shows that all those efforts that are really sometimes difficult to the countries, especially the small islands like Fiji and Vanuatu, to generate the biennial transparency report, are actually very useful to other purposes, like not only the NDC update, but also to embed the climate change consideration in the national development strategies and in general into development of the states. And I like the way Olia put it forward, like integrated MRV system or integrated MRV framework. That's what we offer it, and now it's proved to be very efficient to many of the countries, where you combine together the policy impact assessment with generating of projections of GHG towards 2030 or towards 2035, and then to see where the country is in terms of NDC implementation and what could be the next target for the country. And then put everything based on the data in the MRV framework. That's really a nice way to also to communicate it to the ministries, to the high-level political level, and also to attract the climate finance. That's really co-benefit of the use of data for biennial transparency report. And for that, we can offer to the countries many guides, many tools. Like, for example, in the context of methane, there is the guide that help countries to assess the GHG impact of policies and measures in agriculture. It's been recently updated by our colleagues from GHGMI. And the very nice feature of it that all the assessment, all the calculations there are based on the IPCC approach, on the IPCC guidelines. So whenever the country would apply that tool, get the emission reductions of the policies and measures, that is aligned with the approach for national inventories. So it makes all the system of data consistent with what's reported under the inventories, what's reported under the NDC tracking, what's maybe put on the Article 6, for example, for the proposal for cooperative approaches. And then we have the very simple but nice tool, GASMO. It's called Greenhouse Abatement Model that could, connect all the dots and put the inventories, put the projections together, and also have the NDC tracking feature. So by combining all these features together in one project, the country could get the integrated MRV at the end of maybe 12 or 13 months. That's what Fiji demonstrated, and that's the way where Vanuatu is going to. So, we are very happy to support countries in Pacific. It's really far from us because ICAT Secretariat is based in Germany, in Bonn. Nevertheless, we feel, connected to that region, and we're happy to continue. Thank you.
Thank you to the three of you. I think, as you've all heard, like there is an immense support available to countries who are really interested in moving their work on the Enhanced Transparency Framework, but also on trying to mitigate other more potent greenhouse gases that are occurring in our economies. And I think for SIDS, the 1.5 degree target is absolutely necessary to reach for our survival. But what I'd like to say before I hand over to you guys to ask questions is that we need to remember this, is that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And that is why it's very important to continue to strengthen our data management systems. So colleagues, I'm going to hand over the floor to you all. So if you have any questions, we have a few minutes. We can take two questions before we close off the event. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Jade. I work for the UN Environment Program. And I had a question for the country representatives. And I'd like to know how you see the use of AI, new technologies like digitalization of your transparency systems. How do you see that improving the long-term transparency system that you're putting in place? And if, you have experience with third-party data, using it, or, other institutions that provide like data that's not national data. Thanks. I hope this is clear.
Okay, we'll take the other question as well, and then we'll let our panelists answer the question.
Thank you so much, all the presenters. I must say I am impressed with the level of data engagement that Fiji has done. My question is about involvement of other stakeholders in the country or in the region. How are they able to provide the information into the program that you have created? And how are they also contributing in terms of reporting? Because the MRV system is about putting data and also to give updates in terms of what they are doing. Because in other countries, we are failing to mobilize everyone to bring information into one place. So I would like to hear how you are able to mobilize others to contribute.
All right, so Regila?
Thank you. I'll maybe give my answers to both the questions first before I hand it over to my colleague director from Vanuatu. So for the first question, I think what we're trying to do is we want to have our own national transparency tools. We know there's so many available, but this data is our national custodian, and we want to have the rights and user rights, and also it should be our country's data that's only accessible to us. So that's why we are focusing on these. But nevertheless, we are learning from what other tools that are available by different organizations have to offer, and we'll try and adapt those in our national context, because the tools that are available may be very heavy for us, because not all the activities categories are happening in Fiji, and we don't want to give that to our line ministries to give us information that will confuse them. So we want to have a simple, tailor-made digital tool for us. So that's why we're working through our CBIT project. And to answer your question on how we're going to engage with stakeholders, not just government ministries, but also external. So I think with our government in Fiji, it's very easy now to get information from other line ministries. We have those enabling environment. We have a very good political support in data sharing with line ministries. So we are able to capture those information that's needed from all the respective sectors in Fiji. So that is not an issue, but the issue is, do they have that information? So that's what we're trying to work on too. So with this CBIT project, we are also going to line ministries, discussing what they have, like the data flow system, also through ICAT project, what is there, what is missing, what is needed. And based on that, we have made data sharing templates and so on. And for the line ministries, our Climate Change Act actually mandates that the permanent secretaries for the respective line ministries, they should be collecting the information for their sectors. So a very good example is that our energy sector data will be from Department of Energy. So they will liaise with their entities, for example, our electricity utility, and get the information from them. But that also needs support. So what we're trying to do is moving ahead, maybe further from this CBIT project and through this CBIT project or any other project, we're trying to establish data sharing agreements with those entities. Now that agreements, that's part of government's due diligence process that we can do. But we need to support those organizations as well, so that they, when they're collecting their organization data, they're doing it for their policies, plans, or their purposes, their operational purposes, not for us. So how do we enhance their system so that they also get the information that we need? So those are things that we're trying to work. It takes a lot of effort, but we're trying to see where we can have most impact and invest our resources in. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Ranchila. And we'll just get a quick response from our colleagues from Vanuatu.
Yes, thank you very much. I might be quick here because I'm also conscious of time. The timekeeper is here. In terms of the first question, of course, when we are improving our systems, we are looking at the future of how things will work. Given now we already face challenges, and the improvement will make easy as to how we progress in terms of committing us into the ETF itself. And in terms of the third-party data, yes, of course, there are times where there is little to none exist within the country and across all those sectors. So then we have to source out for, basically within, in the Pacific, we would say SPC or SPREP with the available data, regional available data, so then we can use to be able to report on in this sense. In terms of the involvement of sectors, of course, through this ICAT project, we're kind of wanting to expand and build sectoral knowledge as to why this program or this ETF process is important for the whole government as far as climate commitment is concerned. So we are kind of engaging all those key sectors, the GHG emission contributing sectors, to this process of training. So they're part of the training, capacity building, knowledge sharing. So then they may be able to know the rationale, because when they have limited to no understanding through the process and the importance to the government, that's where we will not be able to get their buy-in in this process. So they have to know why and how their engagement and the benefits they will source from these engagements. And finally, we also have the similar, the development of the enhanced MRV system. So the MRV system, we will have an upgrade of the MRV system through the CBIT project, but it kind of performing a similar functions as what the Fiji is presenting. So it kinds of making more easy, because that's where through its structures, we are kind of having a nodal officers on its respective GHG emission sectors. So they may be able to input data. But currently the challenge is, though we are kind of requesting them, but within the current JD or the DOR, there isn't something mentioned about this. So this is something which we will be looking into the future to map into their job description, so then they may be able to oblige to be able to provide those information subject to those nodal officers signing offer to them, so they may be able to update whatsoever information which is needed for us to be able to report subject to our ETF. So this is where now we want to envision the ETF into the future. So we're kind of taking it as a priority, because like we all know, Vanuatu is at the forefront of climate change, subject to its impacts, and there are times where we face category 3 and 4 cyclones within 72 hours. So that's where we are standing up and be able to show the global community we are taking serious of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. And so colleagues, this brings us to the end of this event, but it's not really the end, because we have a series of events looking forward to addressing ETF and data issues. So there's one tomorrow at 11 a.m. at the Moana Pavilion, another peer-to-peer exchange with Vanuatu and Fiji, and also our partners, GHGMI and then there is another one in the afternoon that is going to be looking at SAGE. So we will continue this discussion on the importance of strengthening data for ETF. And before I'll leave this pavilion, I'd just like to thank our panelists once again for availing yourselves today. Thank you very much, Vinaka Vakalevu, and our co-hosts, Vanuatu, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, and GHGMI, and also ICAT. Thank you so much. And lastly, our lovely host, NDC Partnership. So thank you very much. And we look forward to engaging with you in the coming 2 days. So see you all.